Good Wednesday evening, listeners, and thank you for tuning in with me from tonight's podcast here on Conversations of a Sister. I thank those who are tuned in with me here online this great Wednesday, March 25, 2026. You can also like and follow me on Facebook and Instagram, or you could just subscribe to my channel here at Conversations of a Sister. I am going to talk about tonight the SAVE Act. And reason being is because when I've had this conversation with individuals, men especially, in the last past week or so, I'm being told that I'm misinformed. Am I misinformed or are they misinformed? So I decided that I'm going to break it down. I spoke about the SAVE Act a year ago, and I talked about how it is a voter suppression law that is designed to disenfranchise millions of Americans, women more so, because of its requirements. Now, I know that those individuals who think that I'm misinformed is because they think that this is just about voter ID and proof of citizenship. That's the wrapping paper that is wrapped up and disguised as. But that is actually not the case. It is a voter suppression bill. And people are like, no, it's not. Yes, it is. Because if the SAVE Act is passed, it would diminish the power of Americans to exercise their right to vote. The act is about voter suppression, severely curbing voter registration. So now you have the current president of these United States saying that the reason why Democrats don't want to, or Democrats as they're being called, Democrats, I've heard it all. The reason why they are not for the SAVE Act, yes, and I'm doing air quotes, is because they want illegal aliens to vote. Illegal aliens are not voting in these states. Uh, the case of voter fraud is 0.000.00007. That's how low this voter fraud is supposedly in this country or alleged in this country. But yet, we have a Republican majority, not really a majority, but I'm going to say a Republican led administration who want to pass the SAVE Act. And for you who are saying, oh, it's the Democrats. No, it is not. And the blame game is so lame because it is not the Democrats. Your president said it himself. He said, I will not sign any legislation into law unless the SAVE Act is included. So, what did they do? They piled up everything into one big ball. They pounded in ICE funding. And we know the Democrats are holding steady on that because they don't want to give DHS any more money. I mean, look at the money that's been wasted so far. We had Christy Nome with over $246,000 in unnecessary ads. We've had money for DHS with their $10,000 bonuses and every other thing that they've been awarded ever since they came into play. So it's like the Democrats are holding steady on not giving additional funding to ICE. So they said, put that aside. Let's fund TSA and FEMA. But of course, your president is telling them no deal unless there's ICE funding and the SAVE Act gets passed. So TSA is being held hostage due to what the current president wants. So don't you wonder why this SAVE Act is so important to him? Because he swears that there is this voter fraud in this country when no one else was heard telling Georgia, I need you to find me 11,340 whatever votes. He was the only one heard on tape telling that to the state of Georgia, but yet we have all of this voter fraud. So if the SAVE Act were to pass, it did pass in Congress and now it's stalled in the Senate. So if the SAVE Act were to pass, it requires every American citizen to provide proof of citizenship. Well, when you register to vote, you already do that anyway. You know, you provide a form of ID, you provide your birth certificate, and you can also prove that you are a resident of the state that you are registering to vote in. That means that you could provide a utility bill, a rent receipt, anything that proves that you're a current resident in that state. But with the SAVE Act, you will have to provide proof of citizenship. It also wants to eliminate mail in voting, yet the current president and his family, they did mail in voting for Florida. But this is something that he wants in the SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act will also put election officials at legal risk, meaning they can be sued if you even think that they registered or allowed someone to vote who was not an American citizen. So basically, the SAVE Act is a new tax poll for voters. Now, some of you say, no, it's not. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because one of the requirements is that you would have to use or you would have to have a passport in order to vote. Everyone don't have a passport. And in this day and time, everyone can't afford to get a passport. And when you get a passport, you have to provide your birth certificate, you have to provide your marriage certificate. That's if you're married. If you're married, you have to provide your birth certificate because you have to prove your maiden name before your married name. You have to prove that that existed. So, 70 million married people who have changed their last name and names on their birth certificate, of course, are very different. But this is a requirement in the SAFE Act. And nearly half of Black Americans under 30 don't have an ID with their current name and address. And rural voters may live far from election offices and would not easily be able to register to vote. We have people who are older. Lord knows my mom is one of them. Individuals with disabilities who would not be able to vote had it not been for mailing voting. But all of this would be a requirement if this federal law were to pass. So, why would the current administration not want people with disabilities and health issues to be able to vote? Hmm. Is it because he cut health care and has given our health care money to Argentina That's a possibility. Why are people being disenfranchised with the Save America Act? The Save America Act is not about protecting elections. And I know that you want to believe that, but it's not. The Save America Act is about disguising voter suppression. Voter suppression is discriminatory and it aims to disenfranchise Black voters, young voters, older voters, and other Americans. Now, me, I have a passport, but the Save America Act, it will also include that states will have to hand over their voter rolls. You will have to give your voter rolls to the federal government. And they will put it in a database. And when it is in this database, they can go through it whenever they like and just kick you off. There was a woman who was online the other day out of Georgia. She went online to check her registration. She registered to vote a long time ago. Like a lot of us, we registered to vote a long time ago. And she noticed that uh, she was not registered to vote. She was somehow disincluded from the database. She had to go re register to vote. And thank God the SAVE Act is not law because she was able to re register based upon what her state requires. Because, by the way, states run federal elections, not the federal government. And that's because the people decide who will work for them. The people decide who will serve them, not the federal government. Elections are fair. And I think that the one who's crying wolf is the actual wolf. Because if you're there now, where is the cheating? You know? Where is this cheating? Where is this fraud? Because a lot of times what we're learning is a confession is their admission. So this voter fraud is not even real. So I think that what we as individuals need to do is to contact our Congress and senators to let them know that we don't want this SAVE Act passed because at the end of the day, it's bullshit. Simply because it is going to disenfranchise millions of Americans. And it's not about voter fraud. It's not about voter ID. It's about stopping you from voting, stopping the majority of individuals from voting. It's about low voter turnout. It's about not allowing the masses to vote. That's what it's about. It's not about voter ID. It's not about illegal aliens voting because illegal aliens already can't vote. Each state have their own rules with how they run elections. Now, for example, I live here in the great state of New Jersey. I'm a registered voter. I've been registered to vote since I think I was 18. It's a long time. So, what happens is I get a ballot in the mail, and on the ballot is a barcode. So if I take that ballot with me to the polling site, they take that ballot and they scan that barcode. And when they scan that barcode, all of my information comes up. They repeat my name, they repeat my address, and the only thing I do is I sign and they compare my signature. That's how they know that it is still me. And I had a friend say to me, well, suppose somebody steal that sample ballot and they go vote on your behalf. Well, if they can't mimic my signature, then they're going to know that it's not me. So it's not something that can't be detected because it can. But illegal aliens are not allowed to vote. That's already the law. So if polling places are already monitored and polling places already have certain barriers, in place for this, why would illegal aliens show up at polling places to vote knowing that they risk the chance of being arrested? It doesn't even make sense. Because if you know this is something that you can't do, it's like you risk the chance of having it done. And, they're saying, oh, well, this is why Biden allowed all the illegals to come into this country because he wanted them to register to vote because they can register to vote. No, they cannot. Illegal aliens cannot register to vote. They cannot. And I know people are like, oh, I've worked at polling places. I've seen it. No, you haven't. You couldn't have because they can't register to vote. There is a roster for those who come here illegally. And that roster follows what the illegal person does. This is why they should know where to go to pick up illegals because this roster follows them. I only know because I helped an illegal get a job. He came here, it might have been a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. He came from Haiti. He came the correct way. He did have a visa. And there are certain things that I discussed with him. And he was advised to get a job. They had to have an address as to where he was going to live. And they had to know who was the head of that household. And he came here to live with his aunt, who is an American citizen. And I think that his visa was based on that. So, in all of his paperwork, being a registered voter was not one of the issues because he knew he could not vote. Why? Because he was not an American citizen. That's just like the young lady who braids my hair. She's from Africa. She's been here for quite some time, and she's here on a visa. And she is not registered to vote because she can't vote. So I know that after the election, when people was coming into her shop, that's the first thing she asked them. Who did you vote for? She wanted to know who certain individuals voted for who because she could not vote. Illegal aliens cannot vote. Voting is already a task within itself. You go, you wait, you stand online, you sign, you verify as you, and you vote. That's a task. So, why would the federal government want to make it a hurdle? It's almost like now they want to make it a hurdle when there is absolutely nothing wrong with our elections and our voting systems. I'm sorry. I know that the whole recount in Georgia was 1,001 times. I know that lawsuits were flying. I know that those votes were audited. We know that no fraud was found. And we also know that there are still some election deniers out there. And I think that something is seriously wrong with you when you have individuals from both sides of the aisle telling you that there was no voter fraud, that it was investigated, that the voter rolls were audited, and you still believe that there's fraud. That's crazy. That's diabolical. That's almost like, really? So, what do you believe. So you'd rather believe what the current president is telling you. And based on his track record, I don't even see how that is legitimate at this point. But that's what you would rather believe. When now the current administration is known as liars because we have an illegal war going on in Iran and no one knows what's going on. We have troops about to get on the ground and no one knows what's going on. We have more than 13 soldiers killed, but no one knows what's going on. We have the Pentagon who has gotten rid of his press office because he doesn't want the press writing about what's going on. But this is the administration that you want to believe? Like, really? I think it's a cult. And I know that's a conversation for a whole nother show, but I did a show on it, but it's a cult. Because when you have the truth presented to you with facts and you still want to believe the lie, then that's a cult. Because you just can't see the truth in it. You just cannot. And there has been a lot of lies coming out of this current administration. And the SAVE Act is one of them. Yes, what's the big deal about presenting ID? That is correct. But what is the big deal about making people jump hurdles to get a passport? And no, the real ID will not do. I know some of you are saying, oh, but the real ID, no. The real ID will not be accepted. You have to have a passport or a certified birth certificate. And they can determine at the polling place whether or not that birth certificate is legitimate or not. It could have a raised seal, it could have whatever, but if they want to deem it not acceptable, then you can't vote. Who want to go through that? Who? I say if you're not registered, register now and register immediately, especially if you are a citizen in the United States. What people don't realize is that the vote does count. If the vote did not count, they wouldn't be trying so hard to disenfranchise it. But your vote counts. Your vote matters. This is why they're trying to put additional hurdles in place. The Save America Act is the Save the Republicans Ass Act. But the only ass that you want to save is your own, and that is with your vote. Because your democracy is our democracy. And that's something that is backed by the Constitution. Because the Constitution of the United States further states that states are in charge of elections, not the federal government. States determine how their states vote, not the federal government. So the SAVE Act disenfranchises women, especially because they now have to have a passport to vote. Nope, the real ID will not do. Nope, your driver's license will not be enough. You have to prove citizenship. And everybody don't have $165 to get a passport. Really? Do you know how many people lost their jobs this year and last year alone? And you think that now they should pay $165 to get a passport? Are Republicans sending out that money to people to say, here, get a passport because we're going to pass the SAVE Act? You're going to need it? No, that's a poll tax. That's on you. And no, everyone can't get their hands on their birth certificate. Now, I have an idea as to where mine is, but it's not here in my home. So that means that I would have to go looking for it. And if I can't find it, then I would have to go to the city and I would have to probably pay to get a copy of my birth certificate. Do you see how this is already an issue? It's not as simple as I registered a million years ago and I can just walk up now and vote. No, they want to put a hurdle in place. And the hurdle is to discourage you from voting. That's the hurdle. But trust me, come the midterms, vote like your life depends on it. Because it very well does. A lot of people died and fought for the rights to vote. And that is an exercise in our democracy that should not be taken lightly. And for those of you who think that you know the SAVE Act, I need you to read the bill that was modified in February of 2026, because that's the one that applies. And what nobody is talking about is how the federal government also wants your voter rolls because they want to be able to kick people up whenever they want. They also want to get rid of mail-in voting, but mailing voting when you have people with disabilities, you have military, you have the elderly, all of those individuals vote by mail. So, and we know that that was Trump's problem in 2020 because the mail in voting was just astronomical because it was convenient. And it is convenient, but it's convenient for those individuals who cannot walk into a polling place, just like he and his family could not walk into the polling place in Florida, which is why they did mail in ballots. This is not a do as I say, but not as I do. We all have the same rights and the same freedoms. And that is not going to be taken away. And if it is tried, all hell should break loose. So call your senators and tell them no on the SAVE Act, because the SAVE Act has so many other things in it that you should read. And it's not about voter ID. It's not about illegal aliens voting. It's about stopping the masses from casting their vote, women especially. So, yeah, read the Save America Act because it saves no one. Do your homework. Do your homework. It's a voter suppression law. That's exactly what it is. I thank you for tuning in tonight. Like and follow me on Facebook or Instagram, or you can subscribe to my channel right here at Conversations of a Sister. Until next week, I'll see you then. If you're not registered to vote, register to vote. Be ready in November. I'll talk to you then. Bye.